Our next, our next speaker for the day is Professor Dave Swain, formerly of Central Queensland University and TerraCypher, and he'll be presenting their project, which is a self-service data microservice for livestock producers. So this project aims to support the red meat industry, which understands the value of data and encourages data sharing throughout the value chain to drive new economic activity. So Dave, if you'd like to share your screen and come off mute, that would be fantastic.
Hey Mick, can you hear me now? Is that okay?
We can hear you, and we've got your screen.
Excellent, great. Look, thanks very much, Mick, for that introduction. And yeah, really enjoying the conference and a great talk by Warwick to kick off day two. And certainly really excited to share with everybody details of the project that we're involved with. So I'd like to just start by just acknowledging and thanking Food Agility for their support, financial support for this project, and also acknowledge that this is co-funded through Integrity Systems. So Integrity Systems is MLA, the National Livestock, they manage the National Livestock Identification System, which is, I guess, a traceability system for the red meat industry. And I think it'll become apparent why they're interested in this particular project. Also, you know, we're very appreciative of the partnership we have with Charles Sturt University, and predominantly that partnership is, I guess, most strongly aligned with the computer science department. And in some ways, the research that we're doing certainly has strong connections into the food industry, into the red meat industry, but the innovations are very sort of securely grounded in that sort of computer sciences. So Lee Hong and Ashad are the two senior researchers involved in that. And more recently, we've got Mahir on board as a PhD student. But I also just like to acknowledge both John and Sean from the Graham Centre at Charles Sturt University. They're really bringing that sort of agricultural domain expertise and, I guess, keeping us honest and keeping us on track in terms of delivering to industry needs. I'm from TerraCypher. As Mick said, I have a bit of a checkered background. I have an academic background. And still have a position at CQ University, Central Queensland University. But TerraCypher is a company that my son and I have set up to really address some of the challenges associated with, I guess, turning what we would say, turning knowledge into action. And this is a great project to really demonstrate some of the capabilities that we think are really important. And so the title of the talk is Self-Service Data Microservices for Livestock Producers. Hopefully by the end of the talk, the title will make sense. And certainly, I think the opportunities to drive value in microservices is key. And I think throughout the talks yesterday and even this morning, I think it's fundamental to a lot of the projects that are being delivered through Food Agility. I guess we've added in a subtitle. It ain't what you do, but the way that you do it. So anybody that was around in the 80s will perhaps know the song by Funboy 3 and Bananarama. And again, I think I'm going to reflect a little bit on that as I go through the talk and touched on that at the end. But one of the great things that we found working in Food Agility, it's about the processes and the way in which things occur and the partnerships between researchers and industry. And as an industry partner that's leading this project, we've really valued that. So yeah, just what's coming up in this talk. So there's probably two sort of elements to the talk overall. The first part of the talk, I'm going to talk a little bit about the high level sort of strategic opportunities and why we might need to think about data sharing microservices. And so that's sort of that high level component. And then in the talk, we're going to move into, I guess, the example around this microservice data sharing work that we're doing in the project. The project is sort of sits behind the banner of TRAKKA. And again, that hopefully will start to make sense. And then at the end, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the learnings and benefits for researchers and some final thoughts. it's probably just, I guess, also mentioning before we sort of get into the detail is where this project came from. And so food agility and integrity systems set some challenges, and it was around, I guess, a digitally enhanced red meat integrity system. And those challenges, there were a number of them, but the one that we addressed was this problem of real-time animal identification and tracking. Now, the reason this is important is through traceability and market access for Australian cattle producers. But we fundamentally felt that, that the opportunity was really around not so much the real-time or continuous monitoring of animals, but picking up on critical points in time where there is an event that occurs. And so we proposed this event-based microservice architecture that was really highly scalable and can deliver across the industries. So yeah, I think it certainly was not the sort of solution they expected, but it certainly was enough to attract their interest and provide us with some funding for the project. So researchers do certainly great research in Australia, and if you look at the 2019, although it's a little out of date, you know, Australia ranks well above, punches well above its weight in terms of research outputs and publications, and I guess you'll all be well aware of that. But I think the area that is becoming of more interest and is something that we felt was really important in the partnerships that we brought together for this particular project was thinking about that sort of the impact and engagement agenda that's increasingly coming to the forefront. And I think, you know, within the food agility, there's lots of really good examples where people are addressing this problem. But generally speaking, there's really room for improvement. When you see a return on investment of 0.5%, you know, that really indicates that things could be done better. And I certainly encourage everybody to have a look at the Department of Education, Skills and Employment. They've currently got a consultation paper out around commercialisation and IP framework. I think the more that researchers that are actually engaging with industry get involved in those conversations, I think the better the chances that we'll get solutions that leverage off of some of the great research that's and activities that are going on in organisations like the Food Agility CRC. But I think that really sets a little bit of a backdrop for what we're thinking about. And I suppose the other part to this problem is thinking about the broad vision of where we're going. And I think this is about us thinking about the sort of microservice and data sharing that's integral to the project that we're talking about. And I think if we look and see how I guess, digital opportunities are changing, and we're seeing this democratization. Again, I think implicit in a lot of the talks that we heard about yesterday was this shift to cloud-based computing infrastructure where we're utilizing and leveraging off of that infrastructure. But what we really want to try and do is have a bit of a system and a process to do that. Now you'll notice every so often there's a spider that comes across the screen. That's really just to capture your attention, because I'm going to come back to some of these ideas later on, and they might seem a little bit left of field as I'm going through them now, but hopefully by the end it'll start to make sense in the context of the project that we're talking about. And I think, you know, for us, food agility, agile food is about, intrinsic to that is this agile data way of thinking, and that's very much at the heart of what we were trying to do within in this project. I guess the other part, as a bit of a big picture background thinking, I've often reflected as an academic and as a researcher, the lens I cast across the space of problem solving. And I think, you know, thinking about how I approach that and the training that I've had is really very focused on specific problems. It's about that securing and controlling data. We're obviously striving for that technical excellence and being hypercritical, and our publication process seeks that approval from our peers to get that in the actual journals that we're aiming to publish in. But as a business owner, I think I see the world quite differently. You know, it is important to address some of those detailed questions, but often I'm looking at the big picture. I'm scanning the horizon for the next sort of opportunity. And data is important, but value from data is the critical thing. And it's about finding a working solution rather than just looking at the technical elements that go into that. And we have to be hyper collaborative to be able to sort of drive the value. And we want to talk to and listen to the customers. And so I think, again, this provides a really interesting backdrop for the way in which we approach some of the problems that we encountered in this project. And again, I'm going to reflect back on this later on, because I think it's been an interesting process that we've gone through in the project, and certainly was an important theme that I picked up on yesterday in the talks. So, you know, again, it's setting this backdrop, we really do try in the project to, I guess, have a framework to operate under. And we think about these 3 Ps that drive impact. And fundamental and absolutely critical starting point is people. People that are working in businesses and want to take control of that business. But ultimately, they want to make today better than yesterday. And that might be just getting the kids to school on time, or dealing with some personal issues, but it can also be the business issues. And we really need to understand the motives and the drivers about people and how they interact with data if we're going to find really appropriate solutions that are going to drive impact. The second element that we really need to focus in on is practicality. We need solutions that work and meet a need. They need to be easy to implement and easy to use. And the Swiss Army knife is a great metaphor for that, thinking about how we can drive really practical solutions going forward that will have impact. And then the final P is profitability. You know, we're delivering business solutions, and businesses need to make money. And so we really need to think about how we can deliver that. And I guess in terms of how we interface the profitability with technical solutions, we sit that in this broader context where we have whole of enterprises that are engaging from individual animals all the way through consumers across this sort of spatial and temporal hierarchy, where we've got these interactive elements that are occurring. And of course, if we say that we've got this profit imperative, we know that the profit imperative is driven by the total outputs minus the costs times the price that we're going to get for that particular element, whether it's a whole animal or price per kilo of a product. And what we're trying to do is think about the technologies and how they sit within this overarching framework. And so this is where we think about the 3 A's. And so those 3 A's are the algorithms, automation, and authentication. So they are fundamental to the solutions that we put forward. And so what do we mean by, or how do they interface with those 3 elements? Well, algorithms are enabling us to understand and better describe the systems that we're operating in. Often that's at the very small scale, but it can be a whole of systems as well. And again, we've seen lots of examples of algorithms over the last couple of days where people are really driving new and novel insight that can help improve that production efficiency. Automation really talks to the cost savings. So that's all about trying to drive down the costs of those production, and automation is a critical element in that. The third A is perhaps a little bit more abstract in terms of authentication, but I, in some ways, think this is perhaps the most important element. And when we talk about authentication, this is about trusted data. And trusted data as it delivers a story that consumers can buy into. And the reason we put that at the far right under that sort of the value that producers can realize from their product is we believe very strongly that this is actually one of those areas that we can have the greatest impact in terms of lifting that profitability, lifting the price, shifting producers from being price takers to being price setters. So that sort of provides a little bit of a framework that we think about the solution space. It's I guess our model or a system that we utilize when we're delivering technical solutions that can drive value. So now into the details of the TRAKKA project. And the TRAKKA project is, as I said earlier, this partnership between Charles Sturt and TerraCypher. We are the industry provider in that, funded through Integrity Systems. And at its heart, it's really a data sharing infrastructure for the red meat industry. But linked to that is this ability to empower producers to control their data, while also providing rich and varied data sets to service providers so they can drive real value for those producers. We very much felt that the National Livestock Identification System was very much about compliance, and we need to shift the lens from compliance to value generation. And so hopefully I can explain in the rest of the talk how we're trying to achieve that. So in our proposal, we put forward a data flow diagram, which is somewhat complex. And I was always told, don't put up complex diagrams with lots of small font in a talk, because people just lose interest and lose track. So please don't try and read any of this. I'm going to just run through the overarching framework so that you can really understand, I guess, the complexity of the challenge that we were trying to address in this particular project. So on the far left is a typical property, and a property is made up of animals where we're having these data creation events, if you like. And those events can be desktop computers that are driving them. They could be in the cloud, it could be a mobile device, or it could be an edge compute module. And those animals are continuously generating those data, whether it's a movement record, whether it's a GPS tracking event, whether it's an animal coming into the yards. So we wanted to try and develop a system that captured all of those events and translated those into a system that we could actually move those events to service providers in a seamless way so that they could get access to a richer array of data. So we proposed this event-based messaging architecture that would allow us to actually transfer those events through this system and drive that value, but at the same time giving the producer control over those data. At the critical element was this, that of value was that the services that are currently out there could be enhanced, and that we could encourage new service providers to participate in this issue. Now, recognizing that we just provided an example of one property, if we look across the industry where we have 25 million head of cattle, plus 25 million plus, 40,000 producers, we wanted to demonstrate how we could scale up this single example across a whole industry. So to do that, we actually developed a demonstration of what the TRAKKA system would look like. And this demonstrated how the system might actually work for an individual producer, and how we could actually convert that high-level thinking into something that was practical and that the industry could make sense of. And so the facilities is a web-based or mobile-based facility where a dashboard is available for a producer to be able to interact with that middle layer, the event-based messaging, and turn off and on their data sharing services. So you can see here where we've got an event where Integrity Systems is allowing access to their data through to a service called Herd Tracker. That opens up a cascading set of opportunities for new services to occur, where they can actually pass on new data to new systems. Now, eventually, the vision for this is that this would open up and we would see multiple data inputs going through to multiple data service providers, and that value could be driven. But again, key to this system was putting producers in control, the click of a button to enable them to actually control that particular system. So that was the vision, and we utilized some tools to really capture, I guess, feedback from producers, as well as working with the funders to really convey how we thought this might actually operate. Now, obviously, we've talked about a lot of complexity in that particular system, and I guess the challenge is breaking really complex problems down into really simple, elegant solutions. And so that we always realized that the critical component was to take one data stream in and be able to convert that into a controllable element that could scale up across the whole industry. And what we're able to do, utilizing this event-based messaging, was construct, I guess, a message exchange that allowed us to route individual messages to the correct data owner and data consumer, but also allow them to know where that data came from in terms of the data publisher. And for us, this was a bit of a eureka moment. This was the ability to configure our systems in a remote and automated way to very elegantly facilitate this data exchange process was really critical. You'll notice in this diagram that we've got some clear lines of separation between the different elements that make up the total system. This is where the microservice architecture comes into play in terms of the ability to deliver this particular solution. And so, we've talked about the routing of that data and the microservice, but critical to the whole infrastructure working is the message itself. So the events that occur, they carry this message. And so we developed a simulation tool that allowed us to do a transfer event from the National Livestock Identification System. And you can see how we use a JSON key value pair for that particular format, where we take a transfer event and we work out all of the critical information that's required to be carried through. Now, on the basis of that, the researchers have been working really hard to think about how we can create a much broader set of standards that can work across the whole industry. And so we're now looking at classes of key value pairs where we have the critical information that allows us to have that flexibility and detail that's critical for this system to succeed. The other part to this was having a whole set of attributes that we knew were going to be really important. So one of the goals that we set was that it was future-proof. We don't want to produce ever having to upload a CSV file again. So the messaging protocol allows us to have machine-to-machine, really remote transfer of information using what's called MQTT. It had to be scalable. The infrastructure had to meet demand. So we're using industry standards in terms of a messaging service called RabbitMQ. It's real time. It's important that data flows all the way through. It's interconnected but independent, so that service providers can develop their own solutions, and it's computer programming language agnostic. We use very small packets of data so that we can actually transfer that data from really remote locations. Again, we want it to be easy to use, and so we've developed a series of SDKs that allows all sorts of end users to access the data. I think that probably the most important element that we wanted to achieve should have probably been at the top. We wanted to demonstrate ownership through control. We gave a simulation tool set to the committee to test this system, and one of the bits of feedback we got was clicking that button was like magic. We felt completely in control of the system. And we also wanted to have some data policies that were really simple and easy to understand. So from Gnarly to Eureka, this was the vision of what we wanted to deliver. And we're only 6 months into this project, but we're at the stage where at the last showcase, we delivered our first set of applications, and this was 3 complete applications. So the middleware you're looking at now is the realization of the vision. We also developed a service application, which is a messaging service called TRAKKA, and we built an NLAS simulator to demonstrate how this might work. And so it's a truly collaborative, outward-looking, end-to-end industry solution that we've sort of got that framework in place. So just closing out, I see Mick's giving me the time. I've got a couple more slides. I think the critical message here is really to say that we've seen this flipping over. In some ways, the researchers have now become industry thinkers and business, working in a more business-orientated way. And in TerraCypher, we've taken a much more sort of research-orientated approach. And it's been really interesting to see that transition. And I think that's something that food agility has fostered, and we've certainly lived that out in this particular project. And going to this secondary thing, it ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. Well, so for TerraCypher, we have a very structured process of really delivering technical solutions. We tried to work through that with the research partners, and it just wasn't possible to do that sort of system. And so we developed a whole set of tools which allowed us to work remotely but interact in a way that really opened up the dialogue and the conversation. And I think that was a really critical part of what has made us succeed. And I can see in the projects that have gone before that various elements of these sorts of tools have been working. And I think that agile methodology is something that really helped pull us the best out in terms of the whole team. So some very final take-home thoughts. The spider was talking about these five Ds. It's about building strategy and then making that strategy work. And that then facilitates this business innovation. And this business innovation is about research in practice and driving the insight that we can deliver through those research in a practical, profitable way, but that's meeting people's needs. So thanks very much for the opportunity to talk. I really appreciate the food agility community. If you want to know more about the TRAKKA project, then certainly check out the TRAKKA website. And if you want us to give you a hand to do something great, then certainly TerraCypher is really excited to be part of this community. And certainly seeing all of the talks over the last couple of days, I think it's a great space to be working in, and we're really keen to share our processes and work more with more people. So thanks very much.
Thanks for that, Dave. Great to hear about the TRAKKA project and what you're doing within this one. We're sort of really excited to see where it goes over the next few months, definitely, and the uptake that it's going to have. We've got a couple of technical questions, but I might actually start with the Eureka moment for you. You did mention one during the talk, and our Chief Scientist, Dave Lambs, actually asked, what early signals are you getting on your hunch or your Eureka moment that it's actually working?
So I think for us, the ability to configure the system in a way that was both robust and scalable was always going to be the challenge. And I guess that was our scary thought at the back of our mind: can we really make this all work? And so for us, actually, the Eureka moment has been, we had a request from, in fact, it was a researcher that wanted to use TerraCypher to deliver some services. And we thought, well, look, this is a perfect opportunity to test whether we can deliver that through TRAKKA and her TRAKKA. And we were able to do that very, very effectively and efficiently. And it was it was the acid test whether the system could work. And so, yeah, we feel very confident, and we're pretty excited that this architecture will be scalable, and we can actually deliver across millions of individual animal events over a given year. So, yeah, there's a long way to go, but we think we've really laid the foundations for a pretty exciting piece of infrastructure.
Yeah, excellent. And we've got a question here, a more technical one, I suppose. It's around data ownership and definitions. And I guess the question is, how do you define data sharing in your context, and how is it different to just the exchange of data?
So one of the things that we set out in TRAKKA was that we would never hold on to or take ownership of data. We facilitate the movement of data. And so in that regard, I guess what we're really trying to do is say, well, actually, where's the source of this data, and who is the person that's been given the responsibility to, make the decision about where that data goes, because that ultimately is the data owner. And we feel very strongly that producers purchase devices to measure information in their production systems, and that data is their data. And so we want to facilitate them to own that. I think it's somewhat opaque often. There's some confusion about, when you buy a piece of kit and you're using it in your system, actually who owns the data. And we hope that this project starts to demystify that. And that demystification comes about when you take control. That control really does provide a very clear signal about who owns it. And we hope that the industry responds positively to the TRAKKA project, because that will send a very strong message to both the data, the people making hardware devices, about who is actually in control of that data. And also, I think we want to put some pressure on the service providers to drive value from those services, not to be, sort of talking about how they're collecting the data, but talking about the services and value that they're driving. So hopefully that's a byproduct of what we do in this project.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dave, look, thank you very much. We're sort of running out of time now, but it's a fascinating project. And as I said, we're in food agility, we're really excited to see where it goes, and obviously to see more and more services come on board and that uptake grow and grow within this project. So thank you and well done. It's been a great presentation.
Great. Thanks very much, Mick. Cheers. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.